everybody. Thanks so much for watching again. We are rounding out our Continuum series for the end of the summer as we're getting ready for the school year to kick off. There are 3 weeks, I believe, until students get back into the go of things with school year kicking back in and that sort of thing. So we'll be getting back into the swing of things as well with them. But next week, we've got our middle school mission trip. So we're looking forward to that, getting ready for that this week. But this week, we are talking more about the cross and what happened after the cross. Last week we talked about that Jesus died on the cross, and that was a big event. That was a moment where everything changed for humanity. But then this week we're looking at a little bit of the Easter story of Jesus resurrecting, and that God wasn't finished on Friday when there were so many questions and so many things didn't seem like they were going well. God still had Sunday that God was preparing for. And so that's what we're talking about this week. And a little bit deeper beyond just the story of God, we have answers and we have parties and excitement and prayers of thanksgiving and praise for things when they go great. But what about when things go badly? Here's the thing. We don't have a lot to offer when that happens, which is a little bit unfortunate because every one of us bumps up against the harder things in life at some point or another. We don't always know what to do when that happens. What do you do when you get made fun of at school for our students? Or how do we handle it when they fail a test, or how do they handle it when they fail a test? What happens when our cat is sick, or we aren't getting the top roles anymore, or our body image is lousy, or our parents are divorcing, or mom is sick, or dad lost his job? I mean, these moments can go on, and those moments are a big deal for your life and for your faith and for our students' lives, because they are the moments when we throw up a prayer and we ask the question that everybody ultimately asks at one point or another: God, where are you? Where did you go? Why aren't you doing anything? If you ever asked any of those questions, then at some point, you've probably gotten mad about it too. I mean, if God is all powerful and capable of pulling off the impossible, why doesn't he do it more often? Why doesn't God do it for us? Why doesn't God do it for me? I've read about the miracles and he did all of that stuff in the Bible, and I've heard stories of him doing stuff for other people. But what about me? No matter what we're dealing with, we all know what it's like to ask, God, where are you? And it's in those darker moments, it's in those moments where we feel distant from God, where we just ask all sorts of questions. And to get what we need, we're going to pick up right where we left off last week. Now, as we dive into the scripture teachings and the lessons, we're starting with Jesus and his disciples. Not standing in a field feeding the 5,000, not hiking around Israel on adventures, not in a boat watching the Son of God walk on water. We're going to pick up at the lowest point in God's story. Jesus is on a cross, and his disciples are standing on a hill nearby watching their leader and their friend be crucified. They're asking the same questions you and I have asked. Where are you, God? God, why are you doing this? What are you doing? This couldn't have been the plan. Aren't you going to do something now? They were crying out. They were shocked. They were outraged. They were at a loss for words, because God hadn't done what they expected him to do. And here's the crazy part. Jesus felt the same way too. One of the things Jesus himself yelled out on the cross was, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's Matthew 27:46 we see in scripture, and that's in red. Wow, I mean, the Son of God asks the very same question that we do in bad situations when we're hopeless and in tragedy strikes and things come our way. We go, my God, why? So we ask those same questions. We ask God why all of the time, and Jesus did on the cross. God in human flesh asked the same questions that we asked. And so we fast forward a little bit in the story, and it says, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, after Jesus has been crucified, the woman took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the woman bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said, why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here. He is risen. Remember how he told you while he was with you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, must be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. Then they remembered his words. And that's in Luke chapter 24, verses 1 through 8. Did you catch that, though? why are you looking for the living among the dead? In other words, you're in the wrong part of the town. He isn't here. He's risen. He's rose from the dead. And don't you remember? Don't you remember that was his plan all along? Now, this is a big deal because Jesus' death and resurrection wasn't just God stepping into the story to correct it when things took a wrong turn. It wasn't God saying, oh, Jesus wasn't supposed to die like that, but I better do something now. When the disciples thought God was absent and idle or not paying attention, God was actually engineering the greatest miracle of all time. And here's where we kind of find ourselves sometimes too. On Friday, you thought God had left Jesus. But on Sunday, you realize that he was with him in a whole new way. He had never been with anybody like this before. On Friday, you thought Jesus was dead. But on Sunday, you saw him alive. Now, at this part, we kind of see the whole story start coming together and God starts moving in some incredible ways. That's what God did for Jesus on Sunday morning. Something he had been planning to do since the very beginning of the whole story. Do you remember how we talked several weeks ago about the garden? When we said Adam and Eve had sinned and things were broken and weren't looking good, but the resurrection is the confidence that ever since that day in Eden, when things looked so bad, God has been working to make things better. Here's the deal. God has been planning the resurrection the whole time because God is interested in fixing broken things. A broken world, broken people. Jesus being raised from the dead wasn't just to make Jesus look good. It was to show the world that God had been involved the entire time. If God had a plan from the beginning of the story for his son, he has a plan for you now. That's what we're showing our students. That's the conversation we're having with our students this week. If God was moving when it appeared otherwise, God's still moving now. When the death seemed to have ended the story on Friday, the story took a whole new turn on Sunday. It assures us that God is still in control, even when it feels otherwise. It tells us God is still involved when we can't feel or always see the evidence of it. Even Jesus, God in flesh, knows what it's like to ask why. God knows we're going to feel distant sometimes because of what Jesus felt on the cross. But he does something about it. God does something about it and steps in. You may be living in a Friday right now. Our students may be living in a Friday, but God knows Sunday's coming. That doesn't mean that things are always going to turn out the way we expect or like. Difficult relationships, friendships, situations will still happen. But God has promised us that in this big picture, in his big story, there's another Sunday coming that will change things forever. The day is coming when he's going to wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the older order of things has passed away. That's God's promise to us in Revelation 21:4. That's a promise. This is a reality because of the resurrection when we have a relationship with Jesus. Now here's where this intersects with our lives and our students' lives. First of all, like we said last week, right now, we can trust Jesus is who he says he is and decide to follow him with our lives. We put our confidence in him, in who he is and what he can do. That one event is the greatest event in human history, and because of it, we can hold on to even the most challenging of circumstances, however hopeless they may feel, and it may feel like a Friday, but Sunday's coming. And that's what we hope for. When we look at difficult situations in our lives, we say, this must feel like what the Friday was when Jesus was crucified. But what we know as part of God's biggest story is that there's a Sunday coming. And that's what we hold on to. That's the conversation we have with students this week, is that when everything seems to be falling apart, we hold on to the hope of the resurrection story. And that's alive and true and still apparent and relevant to our lives today. Hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Sunday. And thanks for everything that you do.